G'day, Simon DeRosa from Exceptional Learners, and season's greetings. I've made this quick little video for you if you're new to ADHD, and even if you're not. Perhaps you're a grandparent, uncle, auntie, cousin, but somebody in your family has just been diagnosed with ADHD. Now, I'm here to explain a few things because our understanding of ADHD has changed dramatically in the last 10 years, and it is not what we thought it once was. Full name: Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. It's a confusing name, and the name, I think, is actually responsible for much of the confusion in the general population about what ADHD actually is. Okay, so let's get to this. There are two parts of the brain which are actually affected by ADHD. They are the frontal cortex. That's the thinking part of the brain, the decision-making part of the brain. We know from MRIs that this part of the brain is actually 30% smaller in mass. 30% smaller in mass than neurotypical or average kids. But there's also another part to ADHD. There's a part of the brain called the limbic system, and that runs on dopamines and oxytocins and all the good, feel-good things which are released into your brain. An ADHD brain actually produces 20% less. So the limbic system is always searching and always on the lookout for something interesting, something fun. It's the distractible part of ADHD. So this is why it's often referred to as an invisible disability. The frontal lobe is 30% smaller, the whole brain produces 20% less, and that's where medication and medicine can help. It actually works on one part of the brain, the limbic system. The frontal lobe that has all the thinking skills, what is referred to as the executive functioning skills, they have to be dealt with behavior intervention. So you have medication and you have behavior. Now, I did say it was a terrible name. I think executive functioning disorder was probably a better name. So what is executive functioning? Well, it's about planning, organizing, sequencing, prioritizing. It's about emotional regulation. It has an impact on the working memory, cognitive flexibility, focus, motivation, task initiative. And when you have various combinations of strengths and weaknesses, because every presentation is different, sometimes these combinations are referred to as time blindness or self-blindness. Perhaps attention hyperactivity disorder should really be reframed as an executive functioning delay, or perhaps even a disability. It is a disability, and we use the word disability because it's a medical condition, and the MRIs, which show the 30% less of the brain, show that it's actually a medical condition that can be seen. So what's the implications of, 30% less on average? Well, it means 3 to 4 years delay in a child's ability to make decisions, good decisions. So if you've got a 7-year-old cousin, niece, grandchild, they're operating 3 to 4 years below. So actually they have the thinking skills of a 3 to 4-year-old. Same if you've got an 8-year-old. They have the thinking skills of a 4 to 5-year-old. A 10-year-old, 6 to 7. A 12-year-old, 8 to 9, and so on. And you can see that the instructions you might give to a 7-year-old are vastly different to the ones you might give to someone who's in preschool. Now, I know that can look really different because often these kids can be very verbose. They can talk lots and you think, wow, this kid's got it. They know so much about all these things. And that's why it can be very tricky, very tricky. You see, there are 3 presentations of ADHD, or executive functioning delay. There is a hyperactivity disorder, which is where kids are always moving. Now, remember the part about the limbic system? When you move, you're creating dopamines. And that's what the brain is searching for. So sometimes hyperactivity is just an expression of how the body is getting the dopamine hits. But that's not the only presentation. You can have an inattentive one. This is much harder to pick up, and it appears in girls as well, because these kids can be really polite, but kind of daydreaming, very socially interactive, very, very compliant. And sometimes that's anxiety. But they're kind of daydreamers and they're nice kids. So you give them an extra reminder, but they're kind of out there. So that's the inattentive presentation. But trust me, the hyperactivity that you see in the physical presentation is still there, but it's cognitive. Their mind can be going very, very quickly. Then there's the presentation which sits right in the middle. A little bit of hyper presentation and a little bit of the inattentive presentation. But that's not all. You see, ADHD does not affect intelligence at all. You can have what's called and referred to as 2E, giftedness. So you can have these incredibly gifted kids. And I work with a few that are just mind-boggling, the way they process and come up with things and see patterns and relationships. They can be so creative and smart, but they can't get out of bed in the mornings, or they can't organize their clothes or keep their room tidy. And it looks like a willful demonstration of misbehavior. But in fact, these kids are actually lacking the skill. They just haven't developed it. So you can be really intelligent, but just not be able to organize your thoughts on paper. You can be incredibly intelligent, but just not know when to start. That's part of the executive functioning delay. And mainly, it's the reason for such confusion as well. Look, it's a lifetime presentation. It's not just something for kids. You know, adults have it. I have it. But there's something about it that you need to know. And this is why your role is crucial. Because it is misunderstood, because it is hard to see, these kids, on average, by the time they attend, will hear from their teachers, from their peers, from the doctors, from their family members, 20,000. That's 20,000 more negative comments about themselves. That they are lazy, that they are selfish, that they're doing these things to make people's lives hard. And it's not true. It's not will. It's actually all about skill. And that's the most important aspect that we've learned about these kids. But that negativity, the blindness to what's actually going on, has long-term effects. You see, these kids with ADHD, they're 3.7 more times likely to be suspended. When you are suspended consistently, there is a hugely increased risk of incarceration, of building up are twice as likely to die. The undiagnosed ones, twice as likely to die, full stop. Car accidents, impulsivity. But the undiagnosed ones will start to self-medicate. They'll look for alcohol. They'll look for drugs. And this is why medication is so important, because they can stop that behavior and allow them time to develop their executive functions. So it's not screens, although screens can make it very, very difficult for kids and it's hard to manage. It's not diet. but diet can make the presentation work. Meds do not turn kids into zombies. There's a whole plethora, a whole range of things that pediatricians now can do. And sometimes a journey of getting those medications right can take up to 18 months. It's not bad parenting. These kids take a particular type of guidance, behaviour management, and it may look very unfamiliar to you. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just very different. They're not lazy, they're not unkind, they're not selfish. They're kids who are at their limit. That's their skill development, that they are trying to do the best they can. Kids will generally, we always do the best that they can in any situation. We do know that more criticism makes it worse. We do know that rewards and punishment, particularly punishment, does not work. Logical consequences, natural consequences that happen quickly, yes, but not criticism. And not losing the screen for a month, because then they lose the opportunity to show it up, to show you what they can do. So how can you support your ADHD grandchild or niece or nephew? One, relationships. Actually, more than relationships, connection. Go into their world. And this is what I do too. And parents are usually fairly astonished about how quickly I can build up a rapport with the hundreds of kids I work with. But it's simple. I go into that child's world. I stay there where they're comfortable. I let them show me around. And then sometimes they're more willing to come into my world as well. Well, to the real world. So if you don't know about the Mandalorian, you're going to. If you don't know what Among Us is, I suggest that you do. Go into their world and develop a relationship with them. Ask them questions about it. You know, these kids have great strengths. They're wonderfully creative, passionate about social justice as well. Go into their world and have a look at them. You know, follow your child's lead. Well, your grandchild's lead. Do some research too on ADHD. And know too that it's like a set of steak knives. When you have ADHD, there's a whole lot of other associated things which are going to occur. There's a big chance of dyslexia, a big chance of dysgraphia, a big chance of learning disorders on top of this, and dyscalculia too. But the big one is that 60% of these kids are going to have sleeping disorders. And that has a huge impact on your kid as well as your grandkid. Routines are so important. Routines will help build the executive function of the kids. And I suppose this points to the sleep too. You know, when you're tired, you just can't make good decisions. These kids are really getting a pile up of a lack of sleep. And if they don't have their routines, it can dissolve really quickly. And I suppose this is the point too. If kids are having a meltdown, then let the parent deal with it. There is a way to deal with it. In fact, once the child is having a meltdown, which you might think is a tantrum, it's often too late. You see, when they're having a tantrum, they're moved into their fight, flight, freeze, and fib response, and they can't think logically. They need to be brought down from that state, which can often take at least 15 minutes for the adrenaline and everything to slow down before they can start thinking and rationalizing again with a brain which is, remember, 3 or 4 years below what their chronological age is. And that takes some management, okay? And it does look different from what we're used to. Look, if you want to learn more about that, I cannot recommend highly enough the work by Dr. Ross Green. Now, there you'll learn how to guide children's behaviour through collaborative, proactive problem solving, and it works. I use this method with ODD, which is oppositional defiant kids, who even if they sniff or smell a power imbalance, will automatically go down to the freeze, flight, fib response. They have no control over that. It just happens to them. But using Dr. Green's work, and there's a heap of videos on it, and some great books, in fact, here it is, will really guide that behaviour. So I suppose what I think is really important is that I want you to believe in them and believe in their kids. This is a really tough time to bring up kids. It's not like the old days at all. And sometimes your kids have been exposed to a lot of bias, a lot of myth, a lot of misunderstanding, and in some cases, some very active discrimination. They've seen their children not invited to parties, told they can't be sitting with or being played with as well. They've seen their children's heart break when they're not invited to parties anymore. This is a really tough time for those kids and to be a parent. And what you can do, as I said, is build a relationship, follow the children's lead, do some research, help establish routine, let the parent lead if there's a meltdown, but believe in them and believe in your kids too. Why? Well, mainly because it takes a whole community to raise kids like this, a whole family's support to raise kids like this. And we've learned so much in the last 10 years about ADHD, what it is and what it isn't. I hope that you can have a wonderful holiday, a safe one. I hope you can build connection and relationship with these kids, because when they know that they've got someone who believes in them, then that's going to help them become more resilient. And that criticism isn't, that tough love, throwing them in the deep end just isn't going to do it. They need that support and understanding. They've had enough criticism. They get that all the time. There's possibly one thing else that I'd just like to finish on. When I said it was a neurological, biological disorder, it's quite true. But there's incredibly strong evidence to say that it's not bad parenting, it's not diet, it's not screen, but it is genetic. So it's very likely not just your grandchild has it, but your child has it. And a very good chance that one of you have it. And perhaps your parents have had it as well. And whilst we use disability as a term of reference, I believe it is actually just part of the normal human experience. I think these kids see the world differently, and I believe we need different at the moment to help us solve the same old problems we keep on encountering. I think these kids are going to be cherished, and they should be allowed to thrive as well, so they can come up and see the different answers and to the different questions as well. Anyway, look, they're great kids. I love what I get to do to help them thrive and be the best they can and release their awesomeness into the universe. And I hope I've explained a few things to you as well. Get on to Dr. Ross Green, listen to your kids' references, join our Facebook group, Exceptional Learners, where we look for tips and tricks and share ideas about finding educational solutions for our kids. Build a relationship, follow the kids' lead, do some research, help build routines, and know that kids are actually, are trying their best. And so are the parents too. Believe in them and believe in their kids. Very safe holidays. Look after yourselves. See you soon. Bye.